In April 1942, the British Royal Air Force officially gave up on America's newest fighter plane, writing it off on paper as a second-tier disappointment. Above 18,000 feet, its engine choked, leaving it slower than the British Spitfire, completely outclassed by the German Luftwaffe, and promptly relegated to low-level ground attacks like shooting at trucks and trains. But while military bureaucrats were busy dismissing the aircraft, American bombers were being slaughtered in the skies over Europe. They desperately needed a savior, and they almost didn't get it because the greatest fighter weapon in human history wasn't born in a high-level military planning room. Instead, it happened entirely by accident because a 32-year-old test pilot named Ronnie Harker took a 30-minute rogue flight on a damp morning and saw exactly what the entire world had missed. To understand how this masterpiece was buried, you have to look beneath the skin of the aircraft itself. In 1940, desperate for planes as France was falling, the British asked North American aviation to build a stopgap fighter from scratch, a task completed in just 102 days. Aerodynamically, the airframe was a generational leap, featuring a radical laminar flow wing that sliced through the air with almost zero drag, and a belly radiator that exploited the Meredith effect, turning heated exhaust air into actual jet thrust. It was the perfect aerodynamic body capable of carrying double the fuel of a Spitfire, but it had a broken heart. Because of wartime trade restrictions, the US military refused to release high-altitude turbo-supercharger technology for export, forcing the plane to be choked by a single-stage Allison engine. The moment it climbed into the thin air where the war was actually being fought, the engine ran out of breath, forcing an elite next-gen superweapon to fly with handcuffs on. The turning point came when Ronnie Harker, a veteran Rolls-Royce test pilot with no military rank or formal authority, was invited by an intuitive commander to fly the rejected aircraft at Duxford. Harker climbed into the unfamiliar American cockpit and pushed the throttle forward, spending exactly 30 minutes pushing the machine to its absolute limits. Below 15,000 feet, the plane didn't just fly, it dominated, clocking in at 35 miles per hour faster than a Spitfire using the exact same power. Harker landed, stepped out of the cockpit, and completely bypassed weeks of military protocol. Rather than filing a standard bureaucratic review, he immediately contacted the head of the Rolls-Royce Experimental Flight Division with a blunt, radical proposal. Weld the two halves of a broken sword together by pulling the choked Allison engine out and replacing it with the legendary British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The British Air Ministry heavily resisted, unwilling to divert elite Merlin engines from home defense to subsidize a foreign failed experiment. However, rogue engineers worked in the dark anyway, and by October 1942, the hybrid prototype took flight, delivering results that were almost beyond belief. Armed with the two-stage Merlin engine, the Mustang's capabilities multiplied, hitting a staggering 441 miles per hour and flying higher and faster than anything else in the sky. Because Britain lacked the industrial capacity to mass-produce the hybrid, they handed the blueprints across the Atlantic to the Packard Motor Car Company in Detroit, which began churning out American-built Merlins on a massive scale. It arrived just in time as unescorted daylight bombing raids over Germany were facing absolute collapse, highlighted by the horrific Black Thursday raid, where effective losses approached 1 in 4 bombers. The Merlin Mustang became the only fighter on Earth with the range to escort these bombers all the way to Berlin, wage a dogfight, and return home safely. In January 1944, General James Doolittle took command of the 8th Air Force and fundamentally changed the air war by unleashing these Mustangs under a ruthless new doctrine. He ripped down the old orders that forced escorts to stick strictly to the bomber boxes, commanding his fighter chief to hunt down and destroy the German Air Force instead. The Mustangs roamed miles ahead of the bombers, catching the Luftwaffe off guard and pursuing German fighters directly down to the airfields where they were taking off and landing. In just 4 months, the German day fighter arm was systematically bled dry, losing over 1,000 elite pilots who could never be replaced, ensuring that by D-Day, the skies over Normandy belonged entirely to the Allies. The ultimate irony of the P-51 Mustang is that it was a masterpiece born out of parallel evolution and unauthorized initiatives rather than a singular national victory. It combined an American frame, a British engine design, a joint nation wing, and a luxury car company in Detroit, all tied together by Anglo-American drop tanks. History consistently remembers the great military commanders and the famous battles, but the skies were truly saved by the quiet engineers working until 3 a.m. in cold drawing offices and a test pilot who looked past an official failure on a damp morning to see a war winner waiting to be unleashed.